The scent hit me first, blood and fear sharp in the cold morning air. My hands shook as I pressed them against my swollen belly, feeling the pup kick restlessly inside me. The pack house loomed behind me, its windows dark and unwelcoming. They'd made their choice clear. I didn't belong here anymore. "You have until sunrise," Marcus had said, his voice cold as winter stone. "Take nothing that isn't yours." Nothing that wasn't mine, as if anything had ever truly been mine in this place. The clothes on my back, the life growing inside me, that was all I had left. That and the crushing weight of rejection that made every breath feel like drowning. The gravel crunched under my feet as I walked away from the only home I'd known for 3 years. My mate, former mate, hadn't even looked at me when the pack council delivered their verdict. Guilt by association. They called it. My brother's crimes were now my burden to bear. The morning mist clung to the trees like ghosts, and I pulled my thin jacket tighter. Winter was coming, and I had nowhere to go. No family to call, no friends who would risk their own standing to help a cast-out Omega. The pup shifted again, as if sensing my fear. "It's okay," I whispered, one hand rubbing circles over my belly. "We'll figure this out." But even as I spoke the words, I felt the lie of them. How could I figure anything out when I was 7 months pregnant, alone, and marked as a traitor's sister? The Moonridge pack had been generous, Marcus said. In the old days, they would have killed me outright. Some mercy. The road stretched ahead of me, empty and uncertain. My feet already ached, and I'd barely walked a mile. The pup was getting heavier every day, making even simple tasks exhausting. How was I supposed to survive on my own? A low rumble reached my ears, a car engine growing closer. My pulse quickened. Most wolves in these mountains knew what had happened by now. News traveled fast in small pack territories. Would they stop to help, or would they drive past the disgraced Omega without a second glance? The black SUV crested the hill, sleek and expensive. My breath caught in my throat. I knew that vehicle. Had seen it in pack newsletters and territory announcements. The Alpha King's convoy always traveled in vehicles like that. But that was impossible. King Darius ruled from the capital, hundreds of miles from this backwater mountain territory. What would he be doing here? The SUV slowed as it approached, then stopped completely. The engine went quiet. My heart hammered against my ribs as the driver's door opened and a man stepped out. Not just any man. Him, even from a distance. The power rolling off him made my knees weak. Alpha dominance, pure and undiluted. His dark hair caught the morning light, his gray eyes fixed on me with an intensity that stole my breath. He was tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the controlled grace of a predator who never doubted his place at the top of the food chain. Darius Blackstone, the Alpha King. "You're a long way from civilization," he said, his voice carrying easily across the space between us. Deep, measured, with just a hint of growl underneath the words. I couldn't speak, could barely think. Why was he here? Why was he talking to me? He took a step closer, and I caught his scent. Pine and steel, authority and something warmer underneath. Something that made the pup settle quietly in my belly for the first time all morning. "What's your name?" he asked. Sarah," I managed. "Sarah Collins." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Collins, you're the sister." Not a question. My stomach dropped. He knew. Of course he knew. The whole supernatural world probably knew about my brother's betrayal by now, and by extension, my disgrace. I lifted my chin, trying to find some shred of dignity. If you're here to finish what Moonridge started, just get it over with. But please, my voice cracked, please don't hurt the pup. They're innocent in all this. Something flickered across his features. Surprise? Anger? I couldn't tell. You think I'm here to hurt you? I don't know why you're here, I said honestly, but I can't imagine it's good news for me. He studied me for a long moment, those gray eyes taking in my worn clothes, my obvious pregnancy, the small backpack that held everything I owned. When he spoke again, his voice was gentler. "When did you last eat?" The question caught me off guard. What? "Food, Sarah. When did you last have a proper meal?" "Yesterday morning. Before the trial." But I wasn't about to admit that to the most powerful alpha in North America. "I'm fine." His eyebrows rose. That wasn't what I asked. Heat crept up my neck. Yesterday. Get in the car. What? I took a step back, my hand instinctively moving to protect my belly. I can't. You can and you will. There was steel in his voice now, the kind of authority that made wolves across the continent bow their heads in submission. You're pregnant, alone, and clearly haven't been taking care of yourself. Get in the car. Why? The word slipped out before I could stop it. Why do you care what happens to me? He was quiet for so long I thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than I'd ever heard an alpha speak to a disgraced omega. Because someone should. Tears pricked at my eyes. I blinked them back furiously. I wouldn't cry. Not here. Not in front of him. I'd done enough crying in the past 24 hours to last a lifetime. But his unexpected kindness was almost harder to bear than the pack's rejection. At least I understood their reasoning. Even if I disagreed with it, this made no sense. I don't understand, I whispered. You don't have to understand. You just have to trust me. He opened the passenger door. Please, Sierra, let me help. Trust him. Trust the Alpha King. When my own mate had thrown me away like yesterday's garbage. When my own pack had cast me out to die alone in the wilderness. When everyone I ever cared about had decided my brother's sins were mine to bear. But what choice did I have? I could get in his car and risk whatever he had planned for me. Or I could keep walking until my body gave out and my pup paid the price for my pride. The pup kicked again, harder this time. Hungry. They were hungry. And I had nothing to give them. I walked to the car on unsteady legs. Darius watched me approach, his expression unreadable. When I reached the open door, he held out his hand to help me up into the high seat. His fingers were warm, calloused, steady. The moment our skin touched, something electric shot through me. Not painful, but startling in its intensity. His eyes widened slightly. And I knew he'd felt it too. Mate bond. The thought whispered through my mind before I could stop it. But that was impossible. I was already mated, even if David had rejected me. Bonds didn't just transfer to someone else, did they? Darius released my hand as soon as I was settled, but I could still feel the phantom warmth of his touch. He closed my door with careful precision. Then moved around to the driver's side. The interior of the SUV was warm and smelled like expensive leather. So different from the battered pickup truck David drove, or the pack vehicles that always reeked of motor oil and wet dog. This felt safe, protected. Where are we going? I asked as he started the engine. Somewhere you can rest, he said simply. Eat, figure out what comes next. And then, his hands tightened on the steering wheel. And then we'll see. That wasn't much of an answer, but it was more than anyone else had offered me. I leaned back against the leather seat, suddenly exhausted. The warmth of the car, the steady rumble of the engine, the strange sense of safety that seemed to emanate from the man beside me, it all combined to make my eyelids heavy. I tried to fight it, tried to stay alert, ready for whatever trap this might be. But my body had other ideas, the stress and fear of the past day, combined with the physical demands of late pregnancy, finally caught up with me. The last thing I remembered was the soft sound of jazz music from the radio and the feeling of being watched over by someone who might actually care if I lived or died. When I woke, the sun was higher in the sky, and we were pulling into the circular drive of what looked like a small mansion. Stone walls, tall windows, perfectly manicured gardens, nothing like the rustic cabins and practical buildings I was used to in packed territories. Where are we? I asked, blinking away the last of my drowsiness. My personal residence, Darius said, parking in front of the main entrance. Not the palace, somewhere more private. Private. I wasn't sure if that was reassuring or terrifying. A woman emerged from the house as we got out of the car, middle-aged, with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a practical bun. She wore simple clothes, but they were well-made, expensive. Everything about this place screamed wealth and power. "Your Majesty," the woman said, inclining her head respectfully. Then her gaze moved to me, taking in my obvious pregnancy and worn appearance. Her expression softened immediately. "And you must be Sarah. I'm Margaret, the housekeeper. We've prepared a room for you." We've prepared a room, as if they'd been expecting me, as if this had all been planned. I looked at Darius suspiciously. "How did she know?" "I called ahead," he said calmly, "while you were sleeping." "Called ahead to do what exactly?" "To make sure you had everything you needed." He gestured toward the house. "Food, rest, medical care if necessary. You're safe here, Sarah. That's all you need to know right now." Safe. The word felt foreign, like something from a language I'd forgotten how to speak. When was the last time I'd truly felt safe? Before my brother's betrayal, certainly. Maybe even before I'd mated with David, back when I'd still believed that love was enough to overcome any obstacle. Now I knew better. Love was fragile, conditional. It could be withdrawn as easily as it was given. But this didn't feel like love. This felt like something else entirely. Something I didn't have a name for yet. Margaret approached with a warm smile. "Let's get you settled, dear. You look exhausted." She wasn't wrong. Despite the nap in the car, I felt like I could sleep for a week. The constant stress of the past few months had worn me down to nothing, and pregnancy only made the fatigue worse. "I can show myself around," I said weakly. "I don't want to be any trouble." "Nonsense." Margaret took my arm gently, supporting some of my weight. "Taking care of pregnant mothers is one of life's greatest privileges. Come along." I glanced back at Darius, who was watching us with an expression I couldn't read. "What about—" "I have some calls to make," he said. "Margaret will take good care of you. We'll talk more later." Talk about what? About why he picked me up off the road like a stray dog? About what he expected in return for his kindness? About the strange spark I'd felt when he touched my hand? But Margaret was already guiding me toward the house, and I was too tired to resist. The front hall was beautiful. Marble floors, a crystal chandelier, oil paintings that probably cost more than most wolves made in a year. It should have been intimidating, but somehow it felt welcoming instead. "Your room is upstairs," Margaret said, leading me toward a sweeping staircase. "King Darius thought you might prefer something quiet, away from the main entertaining areas." King Darius thought, as if he'd given careful consideration to what would make me comfortable, as if my preferences mattered to him at all. The room she showed me to was bigger than the entire apartment I'd shared with David. A king-size bed dominated the space, covered in soft blue linens that looked like they'd never been slept in. French doors opened onto a private balcony overlooking the gardens, and a sitting area by the fireplace provided a cozy spot to read or just think. "There's a bathroom through that door," Margaret said, pointing to the right. "Full bath, shower, everything you might need. I took the liberty of putting together some clothes for you. They're in the closet. Nothing fancy, just comfortable things in your size." My size. How could they possibly know my size? As if reading my thoughts, Margaret smiled. "His Majesty is very observant and very thorough when it comes to taking care of his guests." His guests? Was that what I was? A guest? "I don't understand any of this," I said, sinking down onto the edge of the bed. The mattress was impossibly soft, like sinking into a cloud. "Why is he helping me? What does he want?" Margaret's expression grew thoughtful. "I've worked for King Darius for 15 years, she said finally. "In all that time, I've never seen him bring a woman to his private home. You're the first." The first? That couldn't be right. Surely the Alpha King had companions, relationships, people he cared about enough to bring to his personal sanctuary. "I think you should rest," Margaret continued gently. "Everything else can wait until you've had some proper sleep and a good meal." She was right, of course. I was too exhausted to think clearly, too overwhelmed to make sense of anything that had happened. But as she moved toward the door, one more question escaped me. "Margaret, is he mated?" She paused, her hand on the doorknob. No, dear, he's not. Not mated. The most eligible alpha in North America, the most powerful wolf in the Western Hemisphere, was unmated. It seemed impossible, but the gentle certainty in Margaret's voice made it clear she was telling the truth. Rest now, she said softly. We'll talk more when you wake up. The door closed behind her with a quiet click, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the growing certainty that my life had just taken a turn I never could have anticipated. I struggled out of my worn clothes and into the bathroom, where I found fluffy towels, expensive toiletries, and a shower that could have doubled as a small room. The hot water felt like heaven against my aching muscles, washing away the dust and despair of the morning. When I emerged, I found a simple nightgown laid out on the bed, soft cotton in a pale green that complemented my eyes. It fit perfectly. Flowing over my swollen belly, without binding or pulling, Margaret hadn't been kidding about King Darius's attention to detail. I slipped between the sheets and closed my eyes, expecting to lie awake worrying about what tomorrow might bring. Instead, I fell asleep almost immediately, lulled by the unfamiliar sensation of being truly safe. I woke to the sound of rain against the windows and the rich smell of something delicious wafting up from the kitchen. My stomach growled audibly, reminding me that I hadn't eaten a real meal in over a day. The clothes in the closet were exactly what Margaret had promised: comfortable, well-made, and perfectly sized. I chose a soft sweater and leggings, marveling at how good it felt to wear something that actually fit properly. Downstairs, I followed the scent of food to a kitchen that belonged in a magazine. Margaret was at the stove, stirring something in a large pot that smelled like heaven. Soup, she said, looking up with a smile. Chicken and vegetable with fresh bread, perfect for a rainy afternoon. What time is it? I asked, settling carefully onto one of the bar stools at the kitchen island. Nearly 4. You slept for almost 6 hours. She ladled soup into a bowl and set it in front of me, along with a thick slice of bread still warm from the oven. How are you feeling? Better than I had in months, actually. Rested, clean, and for the first time in days, not actively afraid. Different, I said honestly. Margaret nodded as if she understood completely. Eat up. You're feeding too, after all. The soup was incredible, rich and nourishing. Exactly what my body had been craving. I ate every drop, along with 2 slices of bread and a glass of milk that tasted like it came from actual cows instead of a carton. Where is King Darius? I asked when I finally came up for air. In his study, making arrangements. Margaret began cleaning up the kitchen with efficient movements. He asked me to let him know when you were awake. Arrangements? That sounded ominous. What kind of arrangements? I think that's something you should discuss with him directly. Before I could ask anything else, footsteps sounded in the hallway, and Darius appeared in the kitchen doorway. He changed out of his earlier clothes into dark jeans and a gray sweater that made his eyes look like storm clouds. Casual clothes, but they did nothing to diminish the aura of power that surrounded him like a second skin. Feeling better? He asked, his gaze taking in my improved appearance with obvious satisfaction. Yes, thank you. I gestured around the kitchen, encompassing the meal, the clothes, the room upstairs. For all of this, but I still don't understand why. Walk with me, he interrupted gently. We need to talk. My stomach clenched with fresh anxiety. Here it comes. I thought. The catch. The price for his kindness. He led me through the house to a comfortable sitting room with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the rain-soaked gardens. A fire crackled in the fireplace, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Darius settled into one of the leather armchairs and gestured for me to take the one across from him. I perched on the edge of the seat, too nervous to relax. I've been in contact with the Moonridge Pack, he said without preamble. My blood ran cold. Are you sending me back? No. The word was flat, final. You're never going back there. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by confusion. Then why? I needed to understand exactly what happened, what you were accused of, what evidence they had, what the real story was behind your brother's betrayal. Shame burned in my chest. My brother, the traitor. The wolf who'd sold pack secrets to their enemies and gotten 3 good wolves killed in the process. The reason I was sitting here instead of home with my mate, preparing for the birth of our pup. And what did you find out? I asked quietly. That you're exactly what you appear to be, an innocent woman who got caught up in someone else's war. His voice was gentler now, but no less certain. Your brother never told you what he was doing. You had no knowledge of his activities, no involvement in his crimes. The Pack Council knew that when they voted to exile you. Then why? Because they were afraid. Because sometimes fear makes people do terrible things to innocent wolves. His hands clenched into fists on the arms of his chair. Because they thought it was easier to sacrifice you than to admit they'd failed to protect their own. The truth of it hit me like a physical blow. I'd known deep down that I was being used as a scapegoat, but hearing it stated so plainly, by someone with the authority to actually do something about it, made it real in a way it hadn't been before. I want you to know, Darius continued, that I've formally censured the Moonridge Pack for their handling of your case. Alpha Marcus will be answering to the Council of Kings for his actions. The Council of Kings, the highest authority in the supernatural world. Marcus would be lucky to keep his position, let alone his territory. You did that for me? I whispered. Justice isn't negotiable, he said simply. Not in my territories. His territories, all of North America essentially, and he'd use that vast power to defend a nobody Omega he'd found walking along a mountain road. Thank you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I know you didn't have to. Yes, I did. The intensity in his voice made me look up, meeting those storm-gray eyes directly. I absolutely did have to. There was something in his expression that made my breath catch, something that looked almost like hunger. Not sexual, exactly, though there was an edge of that too. Something deeper, more primal. I don't understand, I said for what felt like the 100th time today. I know. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, bringing him closer to me. And I know this is all happening very fast. You've been through hell. And the last thing you need is more complications in your life. But a rueful smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. But I can't let you go. The words hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. My heart started beating faster, and the pup stirred restlessly in my belly as if sensing my agitation. What are you saying? I'm saying that from the moment I caught your scent on that mountain road, everything changed for me. His voice was low, intimate, meant only for my ears. I'm saying that when I touched your hand, I felt something I've been waiting 35 years to feel. Mate bond. The words I'd been afraid to think earlier came rushing back. The electric connection when our skin met, the way my body had relaxed in his presence, the sense of safety that made no logical sense. That's impossible, I breathed. I'm already mated. I'm carrying another wolf's pup. Are you? His eyebrows rose. Because from what I understand, David Chen rejected you completely, severed the bond, cast you out, denied any responsibility for you or the child you're carrying. The child you're carrying, not his child. The distinction was subtle but important. That doesn't mean. It means exactly that. Darius's voice was patient but firm. A severed mate bond weaves both parties free to form new connections. It's rare but not unheard of. Rare, like everything else that had happened to me in the past 24 hours. Even if that's true, I said slowly, I'm pregnant with another man's pup. What kind of alpha wants a mate who's carrying someone else's child? The question came out harsher than I'd intended, born of months of feeling unwanted and discarded. But instead of being offended, Darius simply looked thoughtful. The kind of alpha who understands that love isn't about biology, he said finally. The kind who knows that the most important bonds aren't always the ones we're born with. I stared at him, hardly able to believe what I was hearing. You would claim another wolf's pup? I would claim you, he said simply. Everything else follows from that. Everything else follows from that. As if it were the most natural thing in the world. As if taking on a pregnant, disgraced Omega and her unborn child was exactly what the most powerful alpha in North America had been hoping for. I need time, I said finally. It's too much, too fast. I know. He sat back in his chair, giving me space. That's why I'm not asking for an answer right now. I'm asking you to stay. Get your strength back. Let me show you what it could be like between us. And if I decide I can't, if I'm not ready for this, then I'll help you build whatever life you want, he said without hesitation. New identity, new territory, financial support, whatever you need to start over safely. No strings attached, no demands or expectations, just unconditional support. Offered freely to a woman who'd done nothing to earn it except exist. It was more than anyone had ever offered me, more than I dared to hope for when I'd walked away from the Moonridge Pack this morning. Why? I asked one more time. Why would you do any of this for someone you barely know? He was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. Because 20 years ago, I was the unwanted one, the second son who wasn't supposed to inherit, who had to fight for every scrap of respect and recognition. I know what it feels like to be thrown away by people who should have protected you. The pain in his voice was carefully controlled, but it was there. The Alpha King, the most feared and respected wolf in North America, had once been discarded too. What happened? I asked gently. My older brother was the heir, the golden child, the perfect alpha everyone expected to rule someday. I was just extra, insurance in case something happened to the important one. His hands clenched again. When he died in a hunting accident, suddenly I mattered. Suddenly I was worth their attention. I'm sorry, don't be. It taught me something valuable. That worth doesn't come from other people's opinions. It comes from what you choose to do when you have the power to make a difference. And he'd chosen to stop for a pregnant Omega on a mountain road, had chosen to bring her to his private home, to fight for her with the pack that had wronged her, to offer her a future she'd never dared imagine. I don't know how to do this, I admitted. How to trust someone new. How to believe that this won't all disappear tomorrow. You don't have to know, he said gently. You just have to be willing to try. Outside, the rain was slowing to a gentle patter against the windows. The fire popped and settled, sending fresh warmth through the room. For the first time in months, I felt something other than fear or despair. Hope, fragile and uncertain, but real. Okay, I said quietly. The smile that spread across Darius's face was like sunrise, slow, warm, transformative. That's all I can ask for. But even as I said the words, a part of me wondered what I was getting myself into. The Alpha King's mate would never be able to live a quiet, anonymous life. There would be expectations, responsibilities, dangers I couldn't even imagine. And there was still the matter of the pup I carried, David's child, who would now grow up in the most powerful pack in North America. What kind of life was that for a child born of a broken bond? As if sensing my renewed anxiety, Darius leaned forward again. Whatever you're thinking, stop. We'll figure it out as we go. You don't even know what I was. You were spiraling. He said with gentle amusement, imagining all the ways this could go wrong, all the reasons it's a terrible idea. Am I close? Uncomfortably close. Maybe. Sarah. He waited until I met his eyes. I've spent the last 20 years building something worth protecting. Do you really think I'd risk all of that on a whim? When he put it like that, it sounded almost reasonable, almost like something that could work. What happens now? I asked. Now you rest. You eat Margaret's cooking until you're sick of it. You let yourself heal from everything you've been through. He stood up, extending his hand to help me from the chair. Everything else will sort itself out. We let him pull me to my feet, trying not to think about how right his touch felt, how easy it would be to get used to being cared for like this. Will you tell me more about yourself? I asked as we walked back toward the main hall. I know you're the Alpha King, but I don't really know you. Who you are when you're not ruling the supernatural world. He paused at the bottom of the staircase, considering the question. I collect first edition books. I can't cook to save my life, but I make excellent coffee. I have a scar on my left shoulder from a fight with a rogue bear when I was 16. He smiled slightly. I've been waiting my entire adult life to meet someone who asks me that question. Someone who wanted to know him as a person, not just as a title. The admission made my chest tight with unexpected emotion. What about you? He asked. What should I know about Sarah Collins beyond the official reports? I thought about it as we climbed the stairs together. I used to paint, watercolors mostly, landscapes and flowers. I haven't touched a brush in 2 years, but I still miss it sometimes. I paused. I'm terrified of spiders, but I love thunderstorms. And I make the best chocolate chip cookies in 3 states. Now I'm definitely keeping you, he said, and the teasing note in his voice made me laugh despite everything. When was the last time I'd done that? When was the last time someone had made me feel light instead of heavy, hopeful instead of desperate? We'd reached the top of the stairs, and my room was just down the hall, but I found myself reluctant to say goodnight, to break this fragile connection we were building. Darius, I said as we reached my door. Yes, thank you, for seeing me on that road today, for stopping, I gestured helplessly, unable to find words for everything he'd given me in the space of a single day. Thank you, he said quietly, for letting me. He leaned down and pressed a gentle kiss to my forehead, brief, careful, respectful of my condition and my emotional state, but even that innocent contact sent warmth spreading through my entire body. Sleep well, Sarah, he murmured. Tomorrow we'll start figuring out the rest of it. I watched him walk away, his footsteps quiet on the thick carpet, before slipping into my room and closing the door behind me. The space felt different now, not like a guest room, but like a sanctuary, a place where I could finally stop running and start building something new. Outside my window, the rain had stopped completely, and the first stars were appearing in the clearing sky. I rested my hand on my belly, feeling the pup's gentle movements. What do you think, little one? I whispered. Should we stay and see what happens? The pup settled quietly, as if in answer, for the first time since this whole nightmare began. I felt like everything might actually be okay, more than okay. If I was brave enough to reach for it, it might be something I'd never dared to hope for. It might be home. The next morning brought sunshine and the smell of pancakes drifting up from the kitchen. I dressed in another of Margaret's perfectly chosen outfits, a flowing dress in deep blue that made my skin glow and accommodated my growing belly with room to spare. When I made it downstairs, I found Darius already in the kitchen, sitting at the island with a cup of coffee and what looked like official correspondence. He looked up when I entered, and the slow smile that spread across his face made my heart skip. "Good morning," he said, rising to pull out a chair for me. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in months." It was true. Despite everything, or maybe because of it, I'd slept deeply and dreamlessly. Without the nightmares that had plagued me since David's rejection, Margaret appeared with a plate of pancakes that could have fed a small pack, along with fresh fruit and bacon that smelled like heaven. "Eat up," she said, with a satisfied smile. "You're still too thin." Too thin. After months of David's packmates making snide comments about how much weight I'd gained, how ungainly I'd become, it was refreshing to have someone worry that I wasn't eating enough. "I have some business to take care of this morning," Darius said as I dug into breakfast. "Nothing urgent, but it needs to be handled in person. Will you be all right here with Margaret?" The question was casual, but I could hear the underlying concern. He didn't want to leave me alone, didn't want me to feel abandoned again. "I'll be fine," I assured him. "Actually, I was hoping to explore the grounds a little, if that's okay." "Of course. The gardens are particularly nice this time of year, and there's a greenhouse Margaret keeps stocked with herbs and flowers." He hesitated. You mentioned you used to paint. There's an art studio on the second floor if you're interested. Fully stocked. An art studio? When was the last time I'd had access to proper supplies? Proper space to create? The thought of picking up a brush again made something tight in my chest loosen slightly. I'd like that, I said quietly. Good. He finished his coffee and gathered his papers. I should be back by early afternoon. Call if you need anything. Margaret has all my numbers. He paused beside my chair, and for a moment I thought he might kiss me goodbye. A real kiss, not the gentle forehead brush from last night. Instead, he rested his hand briefly on my shoulder, his thumb stroking once across my collarbone. The simple touch sent heat spiraling through me, and from the way his eyes darkened, he felt it too. I'll see you soon, he murmured, and then he was gone, leaving me with Margaret's knowing smile and the lingering scent of pine and steel. He's never brought a woman here before, Margaret said casually as she began clearing away the breakfast dishes. So you mentioned yesterday. I mean, never, dear. In 15 years, you're the first female to set foot in this house who wasn't staff or family. She fixed me with a meaningful look. That should tell you something. It did tell me something. Several somethings, actually, none of which I was quite ready to examine too closely. After breakfast, I explored the gardens as Darius had suggested. They were beautiful, carefully tended but not overly formal, with winding paths that led to hidden benches and small fountains. The greenhouse was a wonder, filled with herbs I recognized and exotic flowers I didn't. But it was the art studio that truly took my breath away. The room faced north, with huge windows that provided perfect natural light. Easels stood ready, canvases stacked against the walls, supplies organized with military precision. Oil paints, watercolors, charcoals, pastels, everything an artist could possibly want. In the center of it all sat a half-finished painting on a large easel, a landscape of mountains and forest that looked remarkably like the view from my bedroom window. The style was bold, confident, unmistakably masculine. His Majesty painted that one last month, Margaret said from the doorway. He comes up here when he needs to think. Darius painted. The revelation shouldn't have surprised me as much as it did. But I'd never imagined the Alpha King having such a peaceful, contemplative hobby. He's very good, I said, studying the brushwork more closely. There was emotion in those bold strokes, a longing that spoke to something deep in my chest. He is, but he's better when he has something to inspire him. Margaret's smile was warm but pointed. Feel free to use anything in here. I'm sure he'd be delighted to share. Share. The idea of painting alongside him, of creating something beautiful in this light-filled space, made my pulse quicken with anticipation. I spent the rest of the morning setting up a small watercolor study of the view from the window. The same mountains Darius had painted, but interpreted through my own style. Soft washes of color instead of bold oils, delicate detail work instead of sweeping gestures. It felt good to have a brush in my hands again. Right, in a way nothing had felt right for months. When I finally looked up, the sun was high overhead, and my back was aching from leaning over the easel. The painting was nearly finished. Not my best work, but not terrible for someone who hadn't touched a brush in 2 years. It's beautiful. I turned to find Darius in the doorway, still wearing the business suit he put on that morning, but with his tie loosened and his sleeves rolled up. He looked tired but pleased, and his eyes went immediately to the watercolor on my easel. It's just a study, I said, suddenly self-conscious. I'm out of practice. It's beautiful, he repeated, moving closer to examine the delicate washes of blue and green. You see the landscape differently than I do. Softer. More. He searched for the word. More hopeful, I think. Hopeful. Yes, that was exactly what I'd been feeling as I painted. Hope, for the first time in longer than I could remember. How was your business? I asked, stepping back from the easel to give him space. Handled. His expression darkened slightly. The Council of Kings will be reviewing the Moonridge situation next week. Alpha Marcus is not pleased with recent developments. Not pleased. I could imagine. Having the Alpha King personally intervene in a pack matter was serious business. Marcus would be lucky to keep his territory, let alone his position. Do you think— I hesitated, not sure I wanted to know the answer. Do you think David will try to contact me? Darius's jaw tightened. He's welcome to try, but he'll have to go through me first. The possessive note in his voice sent a shiver down my spine. Not fear, something much more complicated than that. He rejected me, I said quietly. Completely and publicly. I don't think he'll want me back. Then he's an even bigger fool than I thought. Darius moved closer, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. But his loss is my gain. My gain. As if I were something valuable. Something worth having instead of a burden to be discarded. Darius. I know. His hand came up to cup my face, thumb stroking across my cheekbone with infinite gentleness. Too much. Too fast. But I need you to know, need you to believe, that you have value beyond what any of them saw in you. Tears pricked at my eyes. I'd spent so many months feeling worthless, discarded, less than nothing. To have someone like him look at me as if I hung the moon? I'm trying to believe it, I whispered. Then that's enough for now. He leaned down and pressed another soft kiss to my forehead. Are you hungry? Margaret's been cooking all morning. Lunch was a revelation. Fresh salads, herb-crusted chicken, bread that was somehow even better than yesterday's batch. We ate on the terrace overlooking the gardens, talking about inconsequential things. Books we'd both read, places we'd traveled. Childhood memories that had nothing to do with pack politics or mate bonds. Normal conversation. When was the last time I'd had that with a man? When was the last time someone had been interested in my thoughts on anything other than pack duties or pregnancy symptoms? Tell me about your brother, Darius said as we finished the meal. And just like that, the peaceful mood shattered, my hands clenched in my lap. What do you want to know? Whatever you're willing to share. His voice was patient, non-judgmental. I have the official reports, but I'd like to hear your perspective. My perspective, as if my opinion on Jake's betrayal actually mattered to someone. I took a deep breath, trying to find the words. He wasn't always like this when we were kids. He was protective, sweet even. He looked out for me when our parents died, made sure I had everything I needed. What changed? Power. The word tasted bitter. He got promoted to pack security. Started spending time with wolves who had connections outside our territory. Started bringing home money we couldn't account for, talking about opportunities the rest of us were too small-minded to see. Darius nodded, his expression thoughtful. When did you realize what he was doing? I didn't. Not until the end. Shame burned in my chest. He was my brother. I trusted him. Even when David started asking questions about Jake's activities, I defended him. And that's why your mate blamed you. Ex-mate, I corrected automatically. But yes, David said I must have known, must have been complicit somehow. How could I live with Jake for years and not realize he was selling pack secrets? Because you loved him, Darius said simply. Because love makes us blind to the people we care about. That's not a character flaw, Sarah. That's being human. Being human. Not naive, not stupid, not willfully ignorant. Just human, with all the messy complications that came with caring about people who might not deserve it. 3 wolves died because of information Jake provided, I said quietly. Good wolves, with families. How am I supposed to live with that? By remembering that you didn't pull the trigger, Darius said firmly. By remembering that Jake's choices were his own, not yours. By not letting his betrayal destroy the rest of your life. The rest of my life? Sitting here in the sunshine, belly full of good food, talking to a man who looked at me like I mattered? It was hard to imagine that this could actually be my life. that I could be this lucky after everything that had gone wrong. What if I can't? I asked. What if I'm too damaged by all of this to be what you need? Then we'll figure out how to heal the damage, he said without hesitation. Together. Together. The words sent warmth spreading through my chest, chasing away the familiar cold of self-doubt. A movement in my belly made me gasp and press my hand to my side. The pup was getting more active as I got further along, and this kick had been particularly strong. Are you all right? Darius was on his feet immediately, concern written across his features. I'm fine. The pup's just active today. I rubbed the spot where tiny feet were apparently practicing gymnastics. Want to feel? The question slipped out before I could stop it, and immediately I wanted to take it back. It was too intimate, too presumptuous. Why would he want to feel another wolf's pup moving inside me? But instead of declining politely, Darius moved closer, kneeling beside my chair with careful reverence. May I? I nodded, not trusting my voice. He placed his large hand gently over mine, palm warm against the curve of my belly. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the pup kicked again, right against his touch. The expression that crossed Darius's face was one of wonder, pure and unguarded. That's incredible. Sometimes I think they're going to be a soccer player, I said, trying to lighten the moment. The way they kick. But Darius wasn't laughing. He was staring at my belly with an intensity that made my breath catch. His hand still pressed against the spot where his future stepchild was making their presence known. They're lucky to have you for a mother, he said quietly. Are they? The question came out more vulnerable than I'd intended. I don't know anything about raising pups. My parents died when I was 12, and I never had younger siblings. What if I'm terrible at it? You won't be. His certainty was absolute. You protected them when your own pack turned against you. You're doing everything you can to give them a safe, healthy start in life. That's what good mothers do. Good mothers. I'd been so focused on the fear. Fear of labor, fear of responsibility, fear of raising a child alone, that I'd never stopped to consider that I might actually be capable of this. Will you? I hesitated, not sure how to ask what I needed to know. When the time comes, will you help me? I don't have anyone else, and I'm scared. Hey. He reached up to cup my face with his free hand, the other still resting protectively over my belly. You're not alone anymore. Not in this, not in anything. I'll be there for every step of it if you want me to be. If I wanted him to be, as if there were any question, as if I hadn't already started depending on his strength more than I should. I want you to be, I whispered. The smile that spread across his face was soft and warm, and full of promises I was finally ready to believe in. Then I will be. That evening we sat together in the living room, a fire crackling in the hearth while rain drummed against the windows. Darius was reading through what looked like official correspondence, occasionally making notes in the margins, while I worked on a small watercolor sketch of the fireplace. It felt domestic, peaceful, like something that could become a routine, a life. Sarah, Darius looked up from his papers. There's something we need to discuss. The seriousness in his tone made my stomach clench. What is it? The pack situation. Once word gets out that you're under my protection, and it will get out, there's going to be questions, speculation, political ramifications. Political ramifications. Of course there would be. I'd been thinking of this as a personal matter, but for him, everything was political on some level. What kind of ramifications? Other packs will want to know the nature of our relationship, whether you're just under my protection or whether there's something more formal developing. He set his papers aside, giving me his full attention. I need to know how you want to handle that. How I wanted to handle it, as if I had any idea how to navigate the political waters of supernatural royalty. What are the options? We could keep things vague for now. Let people speculate while you recover and we figure out where this is heading. He paused. Or we could make it official. Official. My pulse quickened. What would that mean exactly? A formal courtship announcement, a public acknowledgement that I'm pursuing you as a potential mate. His gray eyes were steady on mine. It would provide you with complete protection and legitimacy, but it would also put you in the spotlight. There would be expectations, scrutiny, pressure. The spotlight? I thought of cameras flashing, reporters asking invasive questions, other wolves picking apart my every word and gesture. After months of trying to make myself invisible, the idea was terrifying, but it was also tempting. To be claimed publicly by the Alpha King, to have that kind of unshakable protection and status. What do you want to do? I ask. I want to claim you properly, he said without hesitation. I want the whole world to know that you're mine and that anyone who threatens you will answer to me personally. The possessive note in his voice sent heat spiraling through me. Mine. When was the last time someone had claimed me like that, with such absolute certainty? But, he continued, I want you to be ready for it. I want you to choose it because it's what you want, not because you feel trapped or pressured. Choice. He was giving me choice when David had never bothered to ask what I wanted about anything. How long do I have to decide? As long as you need. But Sarah, he leaned forward, his expression intense. I need you to understand that either way, you're under my protection. Official announcement or not. Anyone who tries to hurt you will have to go through me first. Through him first. The most powerful alpha in North America, standing between me and anyone who might wish me harm. Can I think about it? Of course. He stood up and came around to my chair, pressing a gentle kiss to the top of my head. Take all the time you need. We'll make it work either way. We'll make it work. Not I'll make it work or you'll have to figure it out. We, as if we were already a team, already partners in this strange new life I was building. Later that night, as I lay in the impossibly comfortable bed staring up at the ceiling, I thought about choices, about the difference between being claimed and being chosen, about the leap of faith it would take to trust someone new with my heart and my future. The pup was quiet for once, settling peacefully as if they too felt the safety that surrounded us here. Safe, protected, cared for. When was the last time I'd felt all three of those things at once? Maybe never. Maybe that was what made this so terrifying and so precious at the same time. Tomorrow, I would give Darius my answer. Tonight, I would let myself dream about what it might be like to be chosen instead of simply claimed, to be wanted instead of merely tolerated, to be home. If you're enjoying this story of second chances and unexpected love, please like and subscribe for more heartwarming romance tales.